Like, I should put my hands up here, right?
Hi everyone, I am Barry Siegel from MongoDB. We are here today live at MongoDB World. I am joined today by Tamika Reed, who is the founder of Women in Linux. We're so happy to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So can you just tell us a little bit about what is Women in Linux, what is the structure of the organization, a little bit about the history?
So what Women in Linux is, what we do is we try to get more women into tech from an infrastructure perspective. And when I say that, I mean like from building out private clouds, from understanding Amazon, from understanding MongoDB, from understanding really all aspects of tech. So we also focus on entrepreneurs and also creating wealth. So we kind of cover a gamut of ideas and a gamut and a range of people as well too. So we're not only just for women, we have men in our group that we consider allies. One of our editors is an actual male.
And how long has the organization been around for?
So actually we've been around now, it's going on 2 years. We had our first Women in Linux summit last year. Everything we do is virtual. So we had a virtual summit and we have another virtual summit coming up on August the 19th. So go get your tickets. It's going to be good. We're going to have a lot of information for you.
So clearly when you put this organization together, you noticed that there was a gap in the industry. Oftentimes it's hard for women who are trying to break into tech to find a community for themselves. So can you speak a little bit about what the impetus was for starting this up? Was there sort of a defining moment when you said, okay, this is it, I need to put a group together?
Right. So a background about me, I started in 2000. After I started in 2000 all the way through college, all the way up until a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, I never saw another black woman in tech that did Linux. So me and my co-founder were sitting on the sofa and I was like, I will always want to teach someone. So we founded Women in Linux and here we are today.
Amazing. And why Linux? Where did your love affair with Linux begin?
It was kind of like a fluke. I actually started out in Hawaii doing Cisco networking. After I did Cisco networking, I was talking to my lab partner and he was like, hey, this is just like Linux. Me not knowing Linux, I said, hey, this seems just like something I should learn, because he said it was like the command line. And he sold me a compact Presario for $72 and I just jetted off and started learning Linux like that, and it stuck with me. It was something that I had never seen before, so I made my own notes. I joined user forums. I did everything I could possibly do to get a better grasp on what Linux was and how could I make it a career.
Got it. Has Linux ever betrayed you? Have you ever found any weird Linux bugs?
That goes into being open source. So have I found bugs? Of course. Have I, got to think, back in 2000, there wasn't a GitHub. Back in 2005, there wasn't a GitHub. So in order to, submit, you had to join your IRCs. You had to, be a part of the community, and the community was a strong male presence, and the community it wasn't very nice. It wasn't very warming. So you had to either grow thick skin or don't be a part of it. So I kind of did both. I became a part of it, and then I moved away from it. And then you go back to it. I think now, looking over it now, do I think women have an easier chance than what I had in 2000? I think there's more support groups, most definitely.
Yeah.
Do I think it's easier? I think it's a lot of misguidance when it comes to getting into tech and how you can navigate and where you can go. So I try to provide women and men and children and grandparents, anybody I can get my hands on, I try to guide them in a way to help them to understand there's different things you can do in tech, from gaming to flying drones to being a pilot. Like, I'm studying to get my pilot's license. So understanding, I want people to be able to create their own path with a set of guidance, with some type of, hey, here's some stuff to read. Hey, call me if you want to study at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm gonna sit up and study with you.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to do.
So, speaking about the communities that you had to seek out back when you first started on this journey, and you mentioned how the landscape has changed a lot. Like now you have meetup groups and there's all these different opportunities. So you mentioned before you're talking about mind maps that you built. What kind of advice would you give to adults nowadays who are trying to nurture a young person's journey into tech?
So I actually started doing some mentorship. We have kids that email us all the time. We have adults that email us all the time. My number one thing is never stop, because you never stop learning. You never stop getting information either, right? So going to meetups, attending conferences, speaking at conferences, writing a book, doing an open source project. Create your own open source project. Like I want to cover the gamut, and I want people to understand there's a gamut of things you can do. But understand, create a support system around you so that you can have that. And that's very important, to have a support system around you. I came in, I didn't have one. I created my own support system by building my own documentation. That was my support system, right? So, I mean, kudos to those who I have met along the way that encouraged me. And I just want to continue to encourage others.
Right. And how do you tend to encourage students? So you were mentioning before that you have sort of ancillary groups that you put together to support them.
So I encourage students by, one, I want them to attend meetups. Two, I want them to be able to write out their documentation. I think that's important because you're creating your own portfolio. You're branding yourself,
right?
And that's one of the biggest things. Even though it sounds cliche, but when someone looks over who you are and they go to your LinkedIn page and you can say, well, I did this in GitHub or GitLab, or I committed to this open source project, or I worked on this documentation or something, you're branding yourself. So, I even talk about, how people can help other kids. Like if you're a kid, help another kid out, bring them along. And I think we do that, but I think we do it in silos. I would like to see it done across the nation. Like when we talk about, say meetup.com may have an event, a meetup, and no one can see the meetup because they didn't record it. Right? I don't understand why we can't have virtual meetups across multiple locations. I know Rancher does it. I know OpenStack out of San Francisco does it. I do it. But I would love to see that expanded, because the kid who sits in Tallahassee that wants to know about OpenStack, and he can attend the meetup that OpenStack has, or he has to look locally, but he can't get to it, or she can't get to it, it's a problem.
Right. And the platforms are already there.
The platforms are already there.
The technology is built already.
It's already there.
It's just about recording it and making it accessible. Because you're right. I mean, these things generally exist in big cities where there's already a critical mass of people who has an interest in the subject. So how do you really reach the kids who also feel isolated?
We're Facebook Living now.
Of course, yeah. I hope there's some kid out there
now, right?
who sees this and gets inspired out in Tallahassee.
Right. So my goal is to have not have the meetups in silos. Most conferences that everyone has, they're either in San Francisco, they're in New York, they're in Chicago, or they're in Austin.
Right.
When you talk about the Southeast, there's never a conference in the Southeast. We have Re-Rise that's coming up in Atlanta. But then when we talk about something in Miami or something in Tampa or something back in Atlanta or even Huntsville, Alabama, there are engineers in Huntsville, trust me. there are engineers in North Carolina A&T. There are engineers in South Carolina. There's engineers at Morehouse. There's engineers at Georgia Tech. There are engineers at Spelman. What's wrong with having a tech conference in the Southeast where you can get a larger population of minorities to attend, because now they don't have to fly to California and still get a hotel.
It's cost prohibitive to go to these things too. Well, maybe Women in Linux will be one of the first groups to host the Southeast Conference.
I would love it. We need sponsors like MongoDB. We need sponsors we need sponsors. That's what we need. We need sponsors. I understand. I tried to put on a conference. A conference costs $40,000 minimum. That's just for some food, right? Let's not even talk about getting speakers there. Let's not talk about swag, virtual event bags, the whole nine. So hey, if you got connections to sponsors, anybody out there want to sponsor?
I think you might be able to connect with some people in the next couple of days. Just a thought,
please,
maybe they might be around. And it's a great time to be doing something like this. There is a lot of energy in the industry towards focusing on helping minorities, gender minorities, racial minorities really have the same opportunity that others have had in tech. So I think now is a great moment for something like this.
And one other thing I like to add, we often get that is women in Linux for everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean transgender, I mean whatever gender it's tech. For me, it's tech. I don't care if you came in with one leg and no ears. I just want you to show up and learn tech. That's it. I just want you to have a path. I just want you to have information. That's all I'm here for.
Because the software doesn't care who you are.
No.
The Linux doesn't care what you look
Unless
like.
it's AI and it's biased, right?
Okay, well, it's a different topic. Anyway, Tamika, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Was really wonderful.
It's nice meeting you.
Nice
Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you so much. We'll be back in a bit.